Hi, and welcome back to Benz and the Humans podcast. I'm your host, Benz, and you are the humans. And it's been a while since I've been on the platform, since I've recorded any sort of content for the podcast, but I am back and hopefully looking to stay consistent in terms of the frequency and amount of times that I do upload. But yeah, man, we've been through a lot in terms of, the global landscape, the spiritual landscape, and just the state of the world. And this is episode 9 of Free Rants, and I decided to call it States of Damnation because we're basically there. And a lot has come to the light in terms of the the way things are in the world and how people perceive, and in terms of consciousness as well. People are like actually waking up, and we kind of touched on it. I think it was episode 3 of Freelance. Or no, it was actually on the main podcast. It was on spirituality. I mentioned that there's a shift happening, and this was about a year ago now. And the shift has been taking place for about 5 years now. People slowly but surely waking up. And when I say the awakening, it's happening on two levels, where it's happening for everyone in terms of the human race, with us as humans. But then there's a period that we went through as Black people and African people. We went through, called the Great Sleep, where we just basically were sedated and numbed to the point of actually being in sort of an incubation chamber for the longest time, probably for about 500 years, 400 years now. And finally we are actually coming back to our senses. We're actually coming back to who we are, and people are actually being more invested in terms of finding out who they are. And you see a lot of the iteration, or the quote coming back now, is that the proverb that goes, know thyself, and to thine own self be true. So that's for me. That's how I live. And I'm constantly in a state of self-evaluation, self-actualization, and self-realization, because I've realized myself. But it's a matter of every single day waking up with the intention of actually manifesting the person that I want to be, and the way that I want to be for the world. So it's all about that. And every single thing that you want to do, every single uh change that you want to make in the world starts with you. Basically it starts with you. And I know one famous psychologist, Jordan B. Peterson, I think. Yeah, I think it's Jordan Peterson. And he's got some of his highlighted guides or steps towards your your actualization in terms of you as a person. And one of his uh his one of his points is that whatever you seek outside, whatever change you want to make or see in the world, you have to start at home. You have to start by cleaning your room. Basically, that's what he said. And I think, not only do you just look at that from the surface value, but you look at it from even a metaphysical perspective, where it's like, or not metaphysical, metaphorical perspective. You just look at it from a metaphorical perspective, where it's like cleaning your room is you basically putting things in order, and your room is a reflection of your mind, basically, because as above, so below, as within, so without. So if your mind is cluttered, if your mind is disorderly, then your room will be in that exact same fashion. And that is a reflection of the outside society as well. Because it just means that we as a society are not in line. We are not um, clean or sustainable in our living. And that reflects in how we treat the earth, how we treat the planet. And we've been polluting. We've become so complacent. We've become so comfortable with the way things are, that no one's like really taking charge of how we want to see and revolutionize the way we live. And it all starts with the individual. If you can master yourself, you can basically master everything else around you. So that's just something to chew on a little bit. And I've highlighted a few topics that I want to cover today in terms of us catching up. I mean, it's been a while, and the only reason I went on a hiatus or a sabbatical was that I wanted to gain a lot more clarity, a lot more context before I actually deliver what it is that I want to deliver to you guys. Because when it's all said and done, what I want for this podcast is for it to be a point of reference for those that look to find the light within. So it's just basically a step-by-step guide towards actualizing yourself and actualizing and letting that light emanate from within. And it's not that I myself am perfect, or I have found that light and I am, it's like no one's perfect, right? So we're all on a journey, we're all seeking. And for me, this podcast itself is just a point of me highlighting certain aspects of spirituality, metaphysics, and all types of wisdom in terms of seeing things and seeing the world and life from a new perspective, and how that can actually help us towards being better humans, or maybe even transcending the point of being humans, because we are gods and we are the gods. So that's the point of this podcast. And uh, in terms of the topics that I wanted to touch on, we have had like over the past like 6 months, coronavirus, or COVID-19 now they're calling it. We've had riots in America, police brutality, and that's happening. That's been happening everywhere in the world. It's just that now we have platforms that allow us to be able to highlight and be able to speak on these topics with an extensive reach, rather than just being within a small radius of the people around us. Now we can reach millions of people with whatever content you put out. I mean, as much as I haven't been uploading or whatever on YouTube, I've reached 4,000 people with my content, and over 4,000 people. And that's something to behold, and that's something to thank you guys and everyone else that has subscribed, and everyone that's dedicated to watching and tuning into the content that I'm putting out. And I just want to extend my gratitude and say thank you to everyone that has subscribed. And if you haven't, please do. I mean, uh, your subscription, and I mean it's free. So your subscription helps me to further my cause and further my efforts in terms of uh, shining a light on certain topics. And that's part of my destiny, but I won't really speak too much on it right now, because I mean it's not really within the context of what I wanted to touch on today. So just getting into that whole thing, we saw people taking down statues of old colonial representations of like slave owners and colonial masters that were admired and put in place to be remembered throughout history in the form of statues. And people took that down. That was very, as much as it was symbolic, and as much as it doesn't do anything for anyone at this time. Like when we speak about the power of symbolism, the power of symbology, there's a whole new language that comes with that, and it's a language of the subconscious mind. So with people taking down those statues, we are not really speaking in terms of the act of doing, but the significance in the act. So your subconscious mind will now register that as we are tearing down the corrupted history, the oppressive history, the I don't even know what else to call it, but it's been oppressive. It's been, you know, suppressing a lot of people in terms of their own expression. Because now, why should we have statues of people that colonized and pillaged our ancestors' land and our ancestors' property and them as people? So in their acts of taking down those statues, it was much greater in terms of the symbology, the language thereof. And in terms of the language, another thing that was highlighted by one of our most prominent jazz artists here in South Africa, Nduduzo Makatin, he tweeted, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, he tweeted out about the infrared thermometer that they use to take your temperature before you enter a store, and how it's like, why is this thing in the shape of a gun or in the form of a gun, and why do they point it, on your forehead where your third eye is located? It's like the symbolism of that is much greater than just the act. It's because for just the simple act of doing, it's like someone's just taking your temperature. But why are you pointing a gun to my third eye? So that's the type of uh, analytical thinking and analytical perspective that we're looking at in terms of being able to read symbols, signs, and symbols. And once we're able to read and speak on that level, then that's when a higher consciousness, a higher awareness comes to us. So it's very important for us to acknowledge those symbols. And so just on that point as well, the whole riots and the whole protesting movement started uh, with the Black Lives Matter movement. And I don't know, I think I did kind of speak on it before on the podcast, but if I haven't, just in case, it's like I have my own feelings in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement as an entity. It's like, yes, it's good intention, but we look at who is funding it, who is behind this movement, and what has it done for us as a people. I saw some other stats just I think last week about how the Black Lives Matter movement has gathered over $1 billion, but you don't see any significant change from 4 years ago when they started protesting, 5 years ago protesting, or probably even 6 years ago now, when they were protesting for Mike Brown and Eric Garner. So we have to look at that and be like, what are you guys actually doing? What's the purpose of this whole thing? Apart from raising awareness the whole time. Because what's the point when everyone is aware of the situation now? Then what? So we need to look at that and be able to hold those who are involved accountable and be able to ask questions and say, what is it that you guys are actually aiming to do with this movement? Because it's one thing for us to be out here screaming Black Lives Matter and doing all these extravagant and flamboyant showings, but there's nothing to show for it at the end of the day. Because I personally feel like we're wasting our time, with most of these things, that with most of our efforts, and not in a bad way. Not to bash anyone that's involved in protests, not to bash anyone that has been protesting. And I'll speak on the South African context as well, just still touching on the global aspect of it right now. But, I feel like we are wasting our time in terms of just having protests, yet we are demanding things from a system that was built against us. We are demanding change from a system that was never meant to be what we're asking it, what we're asking of it. So how much are we really going to gain from doing that? Like who are we actually asking to change? It's like we live in a system that was based on colonialism, the destruction of the black mind, the corruption of the black mind, and the corruption of the black body. And we're asking, going back to that very same system, asking it to change to accommodate us now. We look at what happened post apartheid, it's like we went back and said, hey, we want to be free, we want our freedom, and we fought. Our ancestors fought. My grandparents were there. My uncle was there, during all of those protests, those movements, and my father was involved in the organizations. So it's not something too distant for us, where we were asking again a system to accommodate us. You look at, yeah, sure, cool, everything. There were some changes. Not to discredit the efforts again. I'm not trying to bash anyone. I'm not trying to bash all the efforts that were made towards the liberation of our people from that oppressive system. But we look at ourselves and how much we've come or advanced from that time, and what it is that we actually gained. And you look at it today, it's like not much. I was actually on a radio show doing an interview. It was the 12th of June. It was a segment for Youth Day. And, shout out to Nkeke Funani and Babwandile Funani of Imba music group, and, for having me on their radio show. So during the interview, the question came, and it was, how much change did we see post apartheid and post the whole liberation struggle here in South Africa? And I said,
there is this facade that SA and the rest of the continent is free. Are we really free?
Oh man, the word, I love the word of facade, because there's two sides of the spectrum that we have seen, and over time we've seen somewhat of reform, but holistically we there isn't much growth, because we're still going to be fighting the same fights we fought in 1976.
Yeah.
Going back to now Mandarin. We fought the apartheid system and Afrikaans as a language.
Yes.
And past 1994, we didn't really see that many changes. Not much has changed, because the only thing that ever changed was the people, or the looks, let's say, of the people that were in power. I said the only thing that ever changed was a hand in power. That's all. And even still, it's like the people that were running the show from behind the scenes, because we know in terms of every republic or democratic state, each and every one of them can be seen as a corporate entity for those who hold the money and fund everything that's happening within the country. They are the ones that make the rules. They're the ones that make the laws and all those changes, because they control the means of production. You look at us as a people now here in South Africa, we don't own any means of production for ourselves. And that's why you see us going out and loaning money from the IMF now. I spoke about that point as well. Anytime we loan money from another country or any sort of entity, there's no way we can pay it back, because that money comes with interest. It's a loan. It comes with interest. And if you never had the money in the first place, there's no way for you to pay it back, because it always accumulates. So it's basically a trap. And then what happens then? Because we can't pay it back, they'll ask for something and say, no, it's fine. You'll just pay it back over a certain amount of time. And, we're getting into the conspiratorial realm now. But, they'll say, it's fine, cool. You don't have to pay it back now, but we want some shares in your mines, or you, whatever they may ask in terms of their terms and conditions. Yeah, that's just what I wanted to get off my chest in terms of the state of damnation and where we're at as a people, where we're at as a global entity. And yeah, I mean, I'm back doing the podcast now, probably from this type of format, no longer the camera format, and I'll be back with interviews, um, going back, continuing from episode 9. Um, we'll continue and have those guests with us, and yeah, we've got some exciting, very very exciting, engaging, thoughtful content coming up soon. So stay tuned for that, and thank you for tuning in, thank you for listening, and be the change that you want to see in the world. But yeah, this has been Bands and the Humans podcast, episode 9 of Free Rants. Peace.